May as well kick us off there. Thanks for joining us, guys. This will be quite non-technical, hopefully. Trying to cover things as simply as we can. There's basically infinite depth we can go into on these topics, but we're keeping it fairly high level. If you want some more detail as we go through, just yell out and we can dive into it a bit more. But there's obviously the Setting Up for Success Post-COVID, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Virus webinar. This is a beautiful piece of Photoshop. Unfortunately, I'm writing a bomb there rather than writing a virus, but I think it still works. And as we mentioned already, the work we want you to do for the first half, as well as listen if you can, think of a question you'd love to solve in your business and think about the bits of information you would need to solve this. And you'll find out why we're doing that as we go through. A couple of key quotes here. If the data is boring, you've got the wrong numbers. I think this is largely just the way data is often produced or presented in a business. People can get real bored once you start talking just basic numbers, so you need to rethink how you're actually talking about data. Most businesses are focused on customers, and instead of thinking about data, think about the person instead. You're just learning more and more information about them, or learning more and more information about your business, rather than thinking about just learning about data and numbers. The other quote in here, data is fact, not the truth. Really useful to understand. There's a bunch of automated solutions you can throw out that will give you answers. Those answers won't necessarily be true or useful for you. So in using data, we're not suggesting you should be replacing yourself or replacing your ability to actually think through things. We're trying to use data to help you leverage that knowledge and help, I guess, magnify what you can do. This is part of the webinar series. This is our fourth one. The rest are all on YouTube. So if you have any interest in marketing analytics, customer analytics, or holistic analytics solution, we can provide the links for those.
And also, Taz, I think just a note, we are recording
yes.
the meeting as well. So if anyone has any concerns or so forth, please just let us know.
Absolutely. We'll also be running a remote working workshop. This isn't to teach you how to be better at remote working. This is to understand the kind of challenges that actually come from remote working. Our theory is it's made silos a lot worse in businesses. So through this workshop, we're trying to help companies understand what those problems are, how consistent those problems are across different businesses, and also try and find some quick solutions using some data and some quick connectors you can do to help reduce that problem. So a couple of questions that have been asked. First one, is there a difference between data and analytics? We've covered this a little bit in the past. Data, the way we think about it, is basically bricks. So if you think of building a house, the data is the bricks, the poles, the nails, the rivets, all the bits and pieces that go into that. If we think of analytics, we think of trying to use those tools, that material, in order to get somewhere. So analytics is the blueprint. Analytics is trying to produce the actual house that you want to get to. Analytics is the steps of how you need to do, what you need to do to get there, and the data are the tools and materials that you use to get there. And there's another one here, which has come from Barry. Often privacy and data security fears paralyze small business from making the most of data. When there isn't the big budget to ensure the best-in-class systems and professional governance to allay these fears, how can small businesses protect themselves without great cost to allow them to make the best of customer data and feel confident they're not breaking the rules? Great question. There's a heap of information we can go into in that. We address that later on. We call it a family heirloom analogy, but we'll take you through that and then the next steps you need to take after that.
I'd also add that I will only ever use 40 words when full would probably do, so apologies for the length of the question.
We'll forgive you this one, Barry. All right, so when you think about the traditional approaches to running a business, especially when it comes to a small business, but this still relates to any large company I've seen before, a real traditional approach has been to run it on gut feel. You know, this is what I've always done, this is the way I think it works, this is what I believe, regardless of anything else. Another is to look at what your competitors are doing and just do the same. Most people, when they start a business, they're focusing on something they're really good at, and the rest of the stuff they're not so good at. So they just focus on their area of expertise and tend to struggle with the rest, which means they get dragged behind. A lot of people, when starting a business, have just leveraged their known contacts, which is really useful, but obviously limits your growth a bit. Some people just watch Dr. Strangelove over and over and over again. It's not the most effective way to start a business, but can help reduce stress. And some companies become really good at making up new initiatives and pivoting and twisting as they go through that. Obviously, the idea here is there can be a better way or a way to leverage those traditional approaches. Technology and pandemics have actually forced quite a change, and we had a bit of argument around this. Technology's obviously been pushing people to be able to be more online and to be able to compare things a lot easier. The pandemic's kind of just forced people more towards that end outcome there. So in the old days, you go to the only provider. There might only be one place in town you can get it. After that, some competitors might pop up, so you go to the closest provider. Catalogs would come out, so you could go to the best provider with the best price. After that, you could review things online, so you go to the best place by price and review. And now, thanks to the pandemic, a lot more people are shopping online, comparing online, and purchasing online through the place with the best price and the best experience. So customer experience has obviously become a bigger and bigger thing as we've gone on. What we're talking about today, though, is how we can use data to actually help you make that shift as a business, data and analytics. What is data and why should I care? It's a really important question. Melbourne Business School did this little study and found that companies that are further along or are leaders in the analytics space get 83% more profits than companies that are laggards. This is both in small, medium, and large businesses, as well as not-for-profits, and that's a huge increase just from getting your house in order, basically. It's really useful to say now that data and numbers can be really confusing and really scary. And if being brutally honest, so are the people that generally work with data and numbers. A lot of the time, a business will think, I know I should do this stuff, but I've never been a numbers person. We've got a whole bunch of data, but it's too expensive or difficult to do anything with it. It's too expensive. It's just too confusing. So what we want people to do when they're thinking about these kind of things, as we were saying earlier, don't think of it as data. Just think of it as understanding your customer better, understanding your product better, understanding your business better, and reframe everything in terms of things you can understand. Because that's all data is. It's a way we categorize the information you already have. So don't think about numbers. Think about what you love, what you're passionate about, and just trying to improve that. So chaos is the law of nature. Order is the law of humanity. Every business gets a huge amount of information through their business, and most of the time they're not getting it in any useful fashion. So when a company thinks that it's really expensive to do analytics or do anything with their data scientists spend about 80% of their time cleaning their data. So if you've set up a nice order structure before that, you're going to save a heap of money when you try to do anything with this. In addition to that, any program you can use, any software you can use, any solution you can use is going to require a consistent structure for your data input. So one of the easiest things you can do as a company is create a consistent structure for any data input you get or output you create. One easy way to think about this is if you're interacting with a customer and you've got a sale, make sure that sale is recorded the same no matter what. So if it's going through your till and it's a cash sale, make sure it's recorded the same as a credit card sale. You're getting the customer details, you're getting them in the same order, the same date, the same time, everything else. As you can see down the bottom here, we've got the kind of evolution of humanity in terms of these things. Historically, some people just recorded nothing. They just remember what they were doing. After that, people have recorded things, but just in random places, which hasn't been terribly useful for it. Most companies, and this is both small and large at the moment, they have a set structure for every data source, but no way to connect it together. So they might have their sales in one system, they might have door numbers in another system, they might have their website analytics in another system, and absolutely no way whatsoever to connect it together. If you want to move on from there, what you want to do is create a set structure for every data source with keys to connect them. That's a really technical way of saying you need a common thread to run through bits of data in order to connect it together. So a lot of businesses might use something like a customer name to try and connect things together. From a data perspective, this is a terrible way to do it, just because you have different people entering the name in different ways. They might shorten it, they might lengthen it. So think about something else that's not going to change. It might be their number, it might be their email address, could be their ABN if you're dealing with a business. And try and find, whenever you're recording information, try and find a way to record that same piece of information across each of those data sets. And that means when you need to pull information together, it's going to be a lot easier for you and a lot cheaper to do. And the gold standard of this kind of thing is to have an integrated structure that allows multiple updates with few inputs. I think maybe Amazon can do that. Maybe Google's doing that at the moment. And there could be a couple of small tech startups that are doing that. And most businesses are nowhere near that at the moment. So if you as a small business can get to that place, you'll be in a lot better place to grow and to scale than any of these other businesses are at the moment. That's where you can use your ability to be nimble to move through. Another thing you need to do as a business is to understand people at scale. Most companies, even if they're B2B, they're dealing with more than one customer at a time. And it's vital to actually understand that without those customers, your business is not going to be anything at all. The more you can understand your customers, the more you can do. The traditional way most people are thinking about this is obviously through CRMs, but that's not necessarily somewhere you need to get to straight away as a small business. The original way, and the way a lot of small businesses still deal with this, is they just remember each customer they deal with. So, you know, when Jan comes in, you know what Jan likes to drink. You'll always have a drink ready for her, but unfortunately, if someone else is serving Jan, they've got no idea what Jan likes. The next evolution of that for people has been to use their phone to remember customer details. This has a really limited shelf life, and obviously it's harder to spread out as your business grows. The next thing, which isn't terrible, but obviously has limitations, is to create an Excel sheet to track customers. It's a really cheap way to do it. It's a really cheap way to migrate things off your phone as well, and gives you the ability to share that information across. The next step people generally take is using a CRM tool or software to store customer knowledge. There's quite a few free CRM tools at the moment online. The challenge with this kind of thing, though, and with any tech you're looking at getting into your company, is you need to understand what problem it's going to solve for you before you try to get it in. If you're just buying in tech because everyone else has that tech, you're going to waste a whole bunch of money and not get any results at all. And this is as true for a small business as it is for a large business. We've talked to companies that have spent $30 million doing a Salesforce rollout or building a data lake and have seen absolutely zero value from it. So it's always important to start with that problem focus first and then worry about the tech later. The gold standard for understanding people at scale is being able to connect your customer data from online to offline and get a full view of customers. Again, there's very, very few companies that are doing that properly and doing that well. Flybys and groups like that should be able to do that, but at the moment they don't have the level of sophistication they require. So even though they've got the data there, they're not able to get to that gold standard just yet. So it's really useful for these areas to have a look at where you are at the moment and just look at where you can get to with that next step. Each of these next steps are quite a small step, but become quite useful in your business, and you'll see magnifiers from it really quickly. Obviously, off the back of that, if you're using customer information, you don't want to get sued. With GDPR, PII, there's a whole range of different compliance pieces that have come through recently. And people want to understand how they can actually use this data without getting sued. So we've created this little analogy, and it's what we call the family heirloom analogy. So when you go to a business, and an entirely different, if you go to a business, think of it, or go to the website, think of it as giving them access to a family heirloom you have. It could be a ring that's been passed down through your family, whatever it may be. And if they take that ring and then they offer it to you in a pretty box, you might say, okay, great. That actually looks really good in that box. I can see how that's giving me value. But if somebody else suddenly shows up with their ring and you've never met that guy, you don't understand that guy, you don't know why he has your ring, you're going to start getting really worried. It's going to make you feel really uncomfortable, and you think it's probably not legal that business has just given away your ring without asking you. So this is an easy way to think about kind of consent in a business. So if a customer has given you their data or their family heirloom, what do you think is reasonable to do with it? Is it reasonable to show them how that family heirloom might look with some of your other products? Yeah, most likely they're already in your store and they're there for that kind of reason. Is it reasonable for you to then talk to Joe, who does insurance for the family heirloom, and then Joe come in and say, oh, I know you've got this thing, despite the fact you've never met Joe? It's going to start to feel a bit more uncomfortable unless you've asked for that prior permission beforehand. So when you're using customer data, always think of getting consent first, and think of dealing with somebody's really personal, private possession. Don't think of it as just information. Think of it as something they can own, they can touch, and they can hold. And think about how it would feel for them if you started giving that away to other people. Obviously, there's a range of things you can do with customer data that starts to move away from that. And when you're doing that, it's often good to consult with somebody, check with a specialist, and the legislation is always evolving, so it's always a good step. We've worked with Mark McGanty in the past. We always go to him for advice. He's nice, quick, and useful if that's the kind of path you're going to go down. There's a whole bunch of companies at the moment. You would have seen exactly what happened with Facebook and with Cambridge Analytica. The kind of things they're trying to do with the tracking app at the moment, or the tracing app for COVID-19. There's all these different issues in sharing that data and how that data could be used and what they can do with that data. As a company, you can buy data from another company to try and understand more about your customers. That's generally okay, but understand exactly how the company has gone about getting that data. Have they gotten consent to share that person's family heirloom with you? And if they haven't, don't be touching that data whatsoever. You're opening yourself up to a world of pain there. This is, I think, the crux and the major problem for a lot of businesses. They have the data, they want to use it, but they don't know where or how to start. If we're talking to a group of analysts, we tell them to create an analytics roadmap. This is going to get real confusing for people, though. So instead, we want you to think about creating a list of questions. There's just questions in your business you wish you could answer, or problems you wish you could solve that would help drive your business. So this might be something like, I have a bunch of customers in. I want to know what group of customers are my most valuable and how I can go and find those customers more. I want to know how happy my customers are with my product and how I can improve that so that they'll talk more about me on social media and I'll get better value out of them. So if you can create this list of questions, the next thing you need to do is to rank them. So rank those questions from the most pressing, the most valuable to the least. Once you've ranked them, jot down next to each question the kind of information you think you need to solve it. So if you have a group of customers and you want to know who the most valuable is, or which group is the most valuable, you'll need to start understanding who those customers are. Why are they coming to you? What kind of products are they buying? Where are they coming from? What do they have in common? If you can understand those different parts of a person, you can start understanding how you need to capture that information. And if you can capture that information, then you can actually solve that problem. If you can't capture that information at the moment, you can look at systems or ways or questions you can use to help answer those questions going forward. And that's all a business really needs to be doing in order to help drive their business forward. This is the biggest, I think the biggest roadblock we have in major companies, let alone small companies, is they're never building this roadmap of questions. Every question is getting answered in a tiny vertical down the bottom for somebody just in that little area. Very few people are looking at how they can solve these questions across a business. And those that are, as we've seen before, 83% more profitable than those that aren't. And anytime you're looking at a new tech or a new way to help deal with your customers or deal with your business, first to look at how it's answering something on that list of questions you're doing and how you can set it up to answer those questions better. So at the start there, we asked some people to note down, to note down a question they want to solve in their business and the information they'd actually need to solve it. So did anyone get a chance to write down a question they want to solve in their business? Feel free to yell out or just chuck it in the comment section if you prefer.
I can kick things off, Tess. I'm actually talking to somebody who is has like a bunch of stores throughout Melbourne, and what they're trying to do is like they're trying to set sales targets every year, every quarter, but currently they are setting it based on the historical numbers. So the question that came up was like, is there any way we can sort of improve those sales targets based on the demographics, like maybe the footfall within that given area? So if you take one store which is in CBD, compare it to some other store which is in the suburb, it's not nice to come up with the same sales targets for each, and they have sort of improved on that based on their own sales targets from the prior years, but maybe they're not, we can establish a stretch goal. So it's just a conversation that I'm having with them based on the external data. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, no, great question. So from that perspective, what kind of information do you think you would need to solve that question for them?
Yeah, we already have some internal data, like how many, what is the sales for the last 3 years? We already have that, and they're using that to set the next quarter's sales targets. What I think might help is if I use the ABS data for like the demographic information, like how many people actually live there or how many people actually go to that area. So there are probably some external data that might help these guys.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. They probably also want to look at the kind of footfall they get, the kind of products they're actually selling per store as well.
Sure.
To see how they're changing by the different areas. The kind of times a day people are shopping, because that can often tell you about how people are behaving, what kind of customers you have coming through, all that kind of information. So it's like they need customers at each store. Yeah, so that's a great question and a great thing that people can easily solve. Capture that information. They might want to set up a loyalty program. They might want to start working on a CRM, or they could just have their salespeople note down, which will be obviously way less effective, but just note down the kind of ages and the group of people that's coming through. They can get more information when people buy a product. They can get their email address and other bits of data there and start feeding that back through as well. So there's a bunch of ways they can capture that information. Obviously, using the external data is great, and ABS data will give you a guide on where to go, but you want to validate that with the actual internal customer information too.
Makes sense.
Ryan's asked, you want to understand how deep and wide we are within an account, how many consultants are interacting with this account, who we're dealing with, what's our exposure if we lose a single consultant or contact within an account. Great. Ryan, feel free to jump in. What kind of information are you thinking you might need to solve that kind of problem?
Well, first and foremost, our CRM information is kind of the Bible that we would use at our company. So you obviously want to look at, who is working with that account from a calls and email standpoint, like what the contact is throughout that account. But then where I'm thinking is there's probably some other information sources that we're not even thinking about or leveraging to really understand why that particular account might be billing well or not well, and the effort that we're putting in as a team and why, that kind of thing. I think we don't really take a measure of it all.
Yeah, so from an internal perspective, probably what you need to look at there is maybe fleshing out what you get in your CRM as well. So in that CRM, make sure you capture every contact you're actually having with those people, who in those businesses you're contacting, what kind of level they are within that business. But also for each of those businesses, use external data to understand how that industry is growing, but also how that business is performing. That way you can understand if they're going to be scaling up, scaling down, what kind of challenges they're going to have, and obviously where you need to pivot your people. But if you can tie all of that information together, and potentially if you can provide that information to your consultants as well when they're talking with that account, you'll find that that feedback loop becomes a lot stronger.
Oh, yeah.
And Barry, how can clients create continuity of measurement of success when the measure of success itself, and say store walk-ins, has fundamentally changed through COVID-19? With the measure changing, how will they know they're doing a good job or underperforming this changing time? Good. Nice, short, well-worded question here, Barry.
Punchy.
What kind of information do you think you'd be using to solve that?
Well, I guess we still have lots of information. It's about what the benchmarks look like, and how do you still manage to? Well, I guess the question is, we have as much information as we need within our own businesses, but how do you know that looks good still? Sales can fall away. They can improve. Should they be improving more? Are they doing better than they actually should be doing? It's very hard to know where you're at in this kind of new world order,
Yeah, absolutely. The first comment I'd make there with that kind of thing is have a look at why your measurements of success have been set up the way they are. So if it's something like store walk-ins, is it because it's assumed that your salespeople can convert X% of that? From there, you might want to actually move your measures of success up. So your measure of success may be revenue or profit or customers closing. And then you start looking at what else has changed downwind. So when it was store walk-ins, it might now be people online coming to visit. So you're looking at how you can actually recalibrate that measure of success with some other information.
So it's perhaps stepping back and looking at the bigger picture again, as you would have done in the first instance to set that measure of success in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, in the first place, when you set that measure of success, it was in a different world.
Yes.
So now you need to step back and understand how that measure of success has changed. And then with the forecasts, you can try and tie those to macroeconomic indicators, which can get a bit dicey at times like this, but will give an indication as to what direction you're expecting things to go in. You can reforecast from there as well and just say that's our new line. We want to get above that line, even if it's not what the old line was.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Not a problem. Just keep jumping forward then. But the reason we did this little kind of exercise here is as a business or as a person within that business, you already know what questions you want to solve. So you can easily, by yourself, write that information down and then start thinking about how you can capture the other bits of information you need to solve that question. So as a small business owner, as a medium business owner, as someone in a large business, all of that is well within your abilities. Sorry, Steve. Question was coming in was around how I might introduce data analytics consideration to them. Yeah, absolutely. Data analytics is a really difficult way or difficult thing to talk about with people. Again, as we said at the start, it's something that can be quite scary with people, for people. So when we talk to companies, we generally don't talk about data analytics. We talk about the problems they have.
Yeah, I think, like you said, and you've really, will you flick a copy of those slides maybe?
Yeah.
Will we get, yeah. Well, mind you, if it's recorded, as I said, it can probably easily be shared to them by way of a recording. But I think people like to know that, you know, you can become a more profitable business if you understand the analytics in their business. The problem is, as you said, they don't really have a champion often. Well, certainly my small business clients rarely have a champion within the business that even understand my marketing reports, let alone, you know, as you said, they'd need to work through a process of what they're trying to achieve and get out of their analytics. Yeah, so
yeah, a lot of small companies are just terrified of an accountant, let alone analytics.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's how you can get them across that path. So we've got kind of a solution cheat sheet that a lot of companies will use. At the top are things that most companies can do by themselves. So most companies can build a forecast. They can work out what we would call a null hypothesis, but it's basically just another forecast of what if I did nothing. So if you make a change, before you do, work out what would happen if you did nothing. And once you understand that, you can build that baseline out, and whatever happens after that, you can relate to whatever the piece of work you've just done is. Whatever solution you've brought in, whatever it is you did, you can use that gap to understand the effect it had. The next piece of that would be test and learn. So just make a change and watch it change. See what happens when you make that change, not just on your profitability, but on all the little lead metrics that might lead up to that. So it could be your website visits, it could be your churn rate, it could be a bunch of other things. Whenever you make a change, make sure you have that hypothesis, the forecast for what if I did nothing, and then follow it on from there. The other major things most companies look at is segmenting their customers, understanding the customer churn and how to reduce that, and business optimization. So where can I reduce costs? Where can I improve things just to get my profits higher and higher? A lot of companies, well, basically every company now should have a website. What most companies don't do very well is make use of that website. Whenever you're using your website, it's really important to tag it up properly and tag it up in such a way it's going to be useful for you. So in order to do that, take a few steps back and think about those questions you're trying to solve. A website and digital is really good to understand more information about your customers and how they behave. So think about the questions you're trying to solve, think about the bits of information you need to solve those questions, and then when you're tagging up your website, tag it up in such a way that it's going to help you answer those questions. Everyone that's got a website should have access to free Google Analytics. It's limited in what it can do and what you can tag up, but as long as you're trying to use it to solve a question, you can make a whole lot of use out of that. Another useful way to go about doing this is to think about a customer journey. So when a customer comes to your website, what are they doing before they purchase something? Are they getting more information? Are they clicking on other products like it? Are they leaving just before they try to purchase something? Understanding these drop-off points, understanding this journey can be really useful to optimize your site and make more value out of your website. If you don't have the money for a research agency, just get your friends to go to your website and jot down the path they take. Talk to loyal customers, get your staff to test it out, whatever you need to do just to fully track their movement across the website. With this, we kind of get this promise of digital. So at the moment, there's more data available than there ever has been before. I think the number of data available in the world is doubling every 2 years at the moment, which is insane. And as we move to the Internet of Things and more phones and computers and everything else happens, that will accelerate even further. So in order to get this value out of digital, you need to understand the best way to work with it. The issue that arises with all this new data being created is there's more holes to fall down than there ever have been before. You can easily be like Alice, just go down a rabbit hole and have no idea where you're ending up and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars solving nothing whatsoever. So just like we've talked about with all the other pieces, with tech or with anything else, if you're going to go down this hole of digital, first work out what questions you want to solve. And then you can start using the information provided through digital in order to solve those. The evolution here for websites, in the past, a lot of websites which purely flash art from the 90s. I think there's a few websites that still exist like that. So if you want to have a terrible time online, you can go to those. The next step was kind of, I have a nice looking website, but I don't know anything from it. Where most companies are at the moment is I have a tagged up website, can track customer visits and actions, and that's it. And when we say most companies, we're talking massive companies. This is where they are. The next step you'd want to take from that is I have a website that tracks user activity and can track people from my digital advertising through to a sale. Obviously, for a lot of companies, digital advertising is the only advertising they're doing. So you want to understand how effective it is and what the path people are taking to get there, so you can maximize the value from that. And the gold standard is I can follow a customer from my advertising to my website, into a physical store, and back online. I know if they're talking about the product they've bought, if they're recommending it to friends, and then if those friends are coming back online. I've seen 2 companies maybe that are at that gold standard level. If you're at the level at the moment where you have a website and you can track visitors and actions, rethink how you're tagging that website in order to get the most out of it. With digital advertising, obviously you can put down little cookies in different parts of your website to help track that better. And when you're doing that, it's generally a good idea not to just put it on visitors. So a lot of people just have, yeah, the person's come to my homepage. I know they've come from that advertising, so that's really good. You want to put it on an action that you want them to take. Do you want them to buy? Do you want them to get to a certain commitment level? And you've already, through use your website, who are the 2 that have it going on at the moment? Netflix do it really well. Google does it really well. Facebook can track across their own people, but they don't go much further beyond that. And Amazon as well. Yeah, if you're putting these digital cookies for advertising on your website, put it at the level of commitment you want that advertising to get them to. So if it's just a general, we want people onto the website and we want them looking at our product, it might be them going into more information. If you want them to have a buy or purchase something just from that advertisement, make the cookie further down. The reason you do this is you can see how effective the actual advertising has become, but also you can retarget those customers. When a lot of people think about data analytics, they just think about dashboards, and it makes me want to punch a lot of people. Data analytics should not be, Code do pretty well, Steve. I don't think from memory they do very good sentiment tracking though. So once you purchase something, I'm not sure how they're tracking you across everything else after that. So when people talk about data analytics, most of the time it's just data visualization. You'll see companies trying to hire analysts and all they want is somebody to make them Tableau dashboards or something similar. And that, Steve, would be a great example of them signing you up without knowing, a great example of them taking your private data and misusing your family heirloom. They'd be opening themselves up for a bit of risk there. One of the major issues with using your data and reporting here, and only focusing on reporting and dashboarding, is it can be really expensive and take a really long time to get a dashboard that you actually want to use. Anytime you visualize something, it becomes, people take it really personally when you visualize something. They want a certain color, they want a certain text, and people get caught in this minutia rather than working out what the actual dashboard was designed for originally. So before you create a report or a dashboard, think about what questions you're trying to answer with that report or dashboard. Are you trying to save time by making a report? Are you trying to save time by making a dashboard? And if you are, then start building on that and build it for that purpose. Worrying about the color, worrying about the font. If it's just an internal dashboard, that can come later. But you should always be working out what problem you're trying to solve with that dashboard or with that report beforehand. The evolution here has been pretty simple. The first one is just drawing up, that's your projected profits. The next has been making a report each month and sending it to accounts people. I still see companies doing this, and some people internally will be spending a day to a week making those monthly reports. And it being just the same data pulling through each time, it can be a massive waste of time. The next step along there, where a lot of companies are at the moment, I have an Excel sheet that updates each month and produces an automated report. That can be quite easy to set up for a business and quite quick. If their data is in order, that becomes really, really simple. Most companies are either there or they've got a dashboard that lets them click a button and get to report the report that they need when they need. Most companies will, or a lot of companies, large companies will have a dashboard, but they still can't get the report they need when they need. The ideal state for this is obviously having a fully automated database platform you can access on your phone, desktop, or car that everyone can see, and they can produce reports as requested and also sends automated reports. I've seen a lot of companies try to get to that stage. I can't think of any company I've seen that's done it properly. The reason for that is the dashboard will just be built for a single area rather than across the business. So if you're a small business and you have to produce profit reports or expense reports for your accountant each year, each month, each quarter, setting up something in Excel or a dashboard can make that really quick, really easy for you. And so you're spending less time doing admin and more time actually doing the things you love. Something that's really important to understand when you're going through all these kind of solutions is there are a whole bunch of snake oil salesmen out there. A recent report suggested that 80% of AI companies don't do AI at all. And the 20% remaining, the majority of them are just chatbot companies. So when you have people trying to sell in tech to you, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, what questions is this going to solve for me if I get this tech in? The other things you need to look out for is, are the salespeople telling me that this AI will solve my problems? Are they telling me it's going to come across all the information I have and fix everything? If they do, they're probably lying to your face. This CRM will solve all your problems. Again, something like Salesforce is beautifully set up and it has an amazing range of abilities. In order to up that CRM or Salesforce to get it to do what you need, though, will cost you millions and millions and millions of dollars if you can find the people to do it. Large companies have fallen down that pit hole many, many times. One you hear in media all the time is this DMP will solve all your problems. It won't, and in a year's time, when cookies disappear, it's going to get a whole lot worse. This data lake and analytics platform made with ML and AI will solve all your problems. Again, it won't unless you know what questions you're trying to solve with it beforehand. Offshoring will solve all your problems. And my personal favorite is this can of gasoline, the match will solve all your problems. And yeah, it absolutely will solve some of your problems, but I guarantee there'll be some others afterwards. If any company is telling you that their tech can solve all of your problems, walk away from the table. So just to spell this out and try and make it really simple, as a person in a business, whether it's small or large, here are the things you can do now to set yourself up for success. If things are quieter than they have been before and you've got extra time, you don't know what to do these things. Firstly, embrace the fear. Everyone's scared of things they don't know, and a lot of people aren't good at numbers. So they're scared of numbers, they become scared of data. Embrace that fear. As we said before, don't think about it as data, don't think about it as numbers. Think about it as the things you love and learning more about that. Embrace that fear and start to use it. When you start to think about things, put the business problems first, not the tech. So if you're looking at any new solution for your business, start with the problems. Don't start with what tool you think you need. Create and implement a structure for your data. This could be for any customer data, for any advertising data, for anything you do. Create that structure and share it across your business. Make sure everyone is using that same structure and make sure that things happen to those people if they're not. This will save you a heap of time. It will make your life easier. It's not sexy at all, but the things you can do with it in the end can be. Develop or improve your current customer record practices. So we showed you those steps you can be taking along that path. So work out where you are and what the next step you need to take is to improve those. Create and prioritize your list of questions, and then start on those you have the data for. So whenever you create that list of questions, as we said, write down the bit of information you need for them. And even if they're not the most vital question, you can start with those. What we do when we're starting a roadmap like this, we'll build out all the questions, we'll see which ones we can answer, and then we'll try and create an iterative process. So if we need these 3 pieces of information to answer this first question, and this next question requires 5 pieces of information, which includes those 3, then we put those one after the other. So in solving this, you're actually solving part of this. You'll save a heap of time and a heap of money in the way if you go through that process. Next thing you need to do, tag up your website, connect your digital marketing strategy to this tagging. When you're tagging up your website, make sure you're doing it to answer those questions as well. So you can go back and review the way your website's tagged up at the moment and ask yourself, what is it allowing you to solve with the current tagging? And what isn't allowing you to solve? And then think about rejigging it from there. And finally, sit down and work out what reports you need and would use regularly. So if by regulation you have to produce a report for your accountant every month, work out what information needs to go into that and the best way to actually get that information in there. If you've got your data clean and structured, you'll find that it becomes a lot quicker and you can start to automate those things. Once you know which reports you need, work out how often you need these and the best way to build it from there. One thing I didn't mention around dashboarding is every time a company looks at a dashboard, no matter the size, they'll tell themselves they need a real-time dashboard. 99% of the time, you do not need a real-time dashboard. If you think about cost in data, you need to think about it from a granular perspective. The more granular it becomes, the more expensive it becomes. Easy way to think about this is if you go to a beach, the first thing you might want to know is what is the name of the beach? And bam, there can be a sign there that tells you the name of that beach. How long is the beach? Again, the sign might be able to tell you how long that beach is. You might then ask yourself, how many people are on this beach? And then you're going to have to start spending some time actually counting those people. And then it might be, oh, how many shells are on this beach? And again, that's going to take more time and more effort to answer that question. And then finally, you might ask how many grains of sand on this beach. And that's going to become a really expensive, really time-consuming question to answer. And it's the same with your dashboarding, with your reporting, with anything else. The higher level it is, the generally cheaper it's going to be to maintain and keep going. The lower you go, the more expensive it's going to become. And obviously, all of this can be seen as really big, really scary. When you break it down, as we've hopefully shown you, there's some clear steps you can take yourself. If you get stuck, just shoot us an email, give us a call. As we went through in those little question sections before, most of these problems are little things we can talk you through in a matter of minutes. And especially in days like these, I'm more than happy to help. And obviously, it's nice to talk with someone other than my couch. So if you have any questions as you're going through those steps, feel free to shout out, drop us an email, whatever helps, and we'll be happy to talk you through that next step. So that's basically what we have. Are there any questions around what we've gone through there? Any areas that weren't clear that you need clarified?
I just realised I had my mic on after my last conversation.
That's all right.
That was well done, Taz. It was really well presented, and as I expected it would be. It was nice and clear and kept simple as you promised.
Not as much trash talking as you might be used to, but we'll get there.
Yeah, true. Bring it.
No worries, Newt. We'll send you guys, so everyone that's been on this, we'll send you the recording as well if you need any more information. Any questions on what we went through? Did anyone else think of any other questions they're trying to solve in the business that they wanted to talk through? If not, we can let you go back out to another beautiful cloudy day.
Thanks heaps, guys. Great. I really enjoyed that. It was very yeah. Even for somebody like me, it was nice and easy to understand. So I really appreciate it, and yeah, we'll try and work out how we can let others in. Yeah, that I'm kind of working with know.
Yeah,
good on you. See ya, and see you, Michael, as well, if you're still there. You probably,
Yeah.
There you are.
No worries.
And good
Nice
to
meet
see
you,
you,
Steve.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Yeah. See you guys.